Okay, so we're on the chapter about Tantra, and we talked yesterday a little bit about some of the misconceptions people have about Vajrayana or Tantrayana. So now we'll go into a more of a reasoned explanation of what it is instead of what it isn't. Okay, so first about the tantric deities. Because the minds of ordinary beings are too obscured to receive teachings directly from the Buddha's omniscient mind, he appears in various form bodies according to the dispositions of sentient beings in order to teach them. Okay, so out of compassion, the Buddha appears in ways that are suitable for our mentality. Yeah, and since sentient beings have so many different dispositions, then there's going to be a difference or a wide variety of forms in which the Buddha appears. Due to sentient beings' different mental inclinations and different physical constituents, various meditation deities appear. All tantric deities are one nature. Okay, so they're not like different human beings. It's not like, Tara's over here and Manjushri's over here and Chenrezi's over here, and they're rivaling for disciples and how many people make offerings to them and pray to them and do their practice. There's none of that. They aren't, individual selves like, we think we are. But rather they're appearances of the exalted wisdom of bliss and emptiness. Okay, so this pristine wisdom of bliss and emptiness is the chief thing in a Buddha's mind, and then all the other good qualities and so forth. But these deities are manifestations of that wisdom. So they are not individual personalities with inherently existent selves. Okay, so Tara doesn't look at Chenrezi and say, gee, your celestial selves are nicer than mine. How come? Yeah, and Manjushri doesn't look at Tara and say, you're so fortunate. Your hands are down. My right hand is so sore holding it up with this sword. So don't think of them like people with and then project inherent existence onto them. Because a blissful mind is used to realize emptiness, many of the meditation deities in highest yoga tantra are depicted in union with consorts. The male deity symbolizes the method aspect of the path, compassion, generosity, and so forth. And the female deity symbolizes the wisdom aspect of the path. It is not the case that these awakened meditation deities have sexual desire. Okay, so again, sometimes you see them in figures, in union. It has nothing to do with ordinary sex. It's symbolic of uniting compassion, bodhicitta, and wisdom, of uniting bliss and emptiness. A Buddha's wisdom may manifest as either peaceful deities or fierce deities. The appearance of fierce deities illustrates the power and clarity of compassion and wisdom. Their ferocity is directed towards ignorance, afflictions, and self-centeredness, the real enemies that destroy our well-being. These awakened deities have compassionate minds and never angrily harm sentient beings. So again, some people see, the wrathful deities. See, this is one reason why this practice should be done in a much more discreet manner, because people who don't know about it misinterpret things. Yeah, and so they think, the deities are in sexual union, so the practitioners do that. And here's this, very ferocious looking deity. He looks like a spirit and he's going to come get me. Maybe he's the devil or whatever. And that's very, very far from the truth. Rather, again, the fierce deities are this exalted wisdom of bliss and emptiness appearing in that form. Okay. Now you might say, well, when you attain Buddhahood, aren't you completely peaceful? Yeah, you're totally peaceful. Then why are they appearing as fierce deities who are ferocious and scary? Well, they aren't. Their ferocity is not directed at us, and they're not trying to scare us. Their ferocity is directed towards our enemies of the afflictions and polluted karma and all the obscurations and ignorance and so forth. Okay, and manifesting in that very wrathful form is kind of like, you know how sometimes you have to develop different ways of dealing with your mind according to how your mind is behaving. And sometimes, your mind is just overwhelmed with afflictions and you have to go, it's okay, I'm practicing kindness to myself, kindness to others. I just have to relax and, not get down on myself and self-critical and just relax, apply the antidotes, the afflictions will decrease, that's fine. Other times, if you know your mind well, that peaceful, self-acceptance, self-compassionate way is not going to work. Yeah, and you need this kind of strong energy with yourself that is like, what you are thinking, what you are doing is totally ridiculous. It's opposite to the Dharma. It's leading where you don't want to go, and you got to cut it out. And that's the way you talk to yourself, And so that the ferocious, the fierce deities are that kind of wisdom, because sometimes wisdom is just, that's why you have a sword. You slice it, it's like, we're not monkeying around here. It's like, boom, we got to get rid of this. Okay? So if you know your mind well, then you know when to apply one way of dealing with your mind, when to apply another way of dealing with your mind. Okay? So personally speaking, I find the fierce deities quite effective on my mind because they give me a sense of the power that I have to do something with my afflictions. Yeah, and do something to counteract. When I say with my afflictions, I mean to counteract my afflictions, not to do something with my afflictions and bring them along. Not that, but it gives you some sense of like, okay, there's a lot of power here. And if I use that power to realize emptiness, to generate compassion, then, I'm going to stop monkeying around here. Yeah. And personally, I find it very effective, Other times, then, it's just like Chenrezi's very soft, gentle energy. That's what I need to use to work with my mind. So, you have to see at different times what works. And so that's why there's these different manifestations of the Buddha. But, the wrathful manifestations are not angry at us. Yeah. And in fact, I find that, the meditation on the wrathful deities helps me get in touch with my anger and how much I usually fear my anger. And so I don't know if you're afraid of your anger, and so you keep clutches on yourself when you're angry because you're afraid of the anger, but you never resolve what you're angry about because you're too afraid of the anger to actually look at it very well. Okay? And so I find, the wrathful deities, it's like, okay, I don't have to be afraid of my anger. Yeah, I can look at it. I can see what exactly is going on, what my anger is trying to tell me. What is it I'm actually needing? What affliction is carrying on here? Okay, and so that becomes an aid to practice. Okay. So Buddhists who do not understand tantric practice may incorrectly regard a deity as an external god to be worshipped. So you do see this a lot. While tantric meditation manuals enjoin bowing, offerings, and prayers, the tantric path is not about worshiping an external being so that he or she will bless us and grant us nirvana. Okay, very far from how it actually works. The Buddha clearly said that we need to cultivate the path ourselves and transform our own minds. Bowing, offering, so forth are methods to purify our destructive karma and create merit, which prepares the mind for meditation on serenity and insight. Okay, so even though sometimes, like you do the Chenrezig practice, you're saying, Chenrezig, please, cleanse my karma and afflictions. Please remain as my teacher in all future lives. Please soothe the suffering of all sentient beings. Don't, even though the words say like that, don't think of Chenrezig's out there like an external God, and I'm praying to Chenrezig to do that. But see Chenrezig as a manifestation of the Buddha that you're going to become. Okay, so what you're really doing is making requests of the Buddha you're going to become, directing the Buddha that you're going to become about what needs to be done to benefit sentient beings. Okay, and you'll notice in the tantric practice, you visualize the deity out there. The deity you think is a manifestation of your own wisdom of bliss and emptiness. You may make these requests, but this deity came from your mind and is a manifestation of your own wisdom. And then at the end of the practice, the deity comes and dissolves back into you. Okay, so not some external being that you're propitiating. Not like that. Receiving a tantric initiation marks formal entry into Tantra. Before receiving an initiation from a spiritual master, it is important to examine the master's qualifications and qualities. A qualified Vajra master has the qualities of a bodhisattva spiritual mentor, which are mentioned earlier, okay, especially the correct understanding of emptiness complemented by bodhicitta. Such a master guards body, speech, and mind from destructive actions, practices the 3 higher trainings, ethical conduct, concentration, and wisdom, is knowledgeable in both the sutras and the tantras, and is compassionate and free from pretense and deceit. So a reliable spiritual master is not going to pretend to have qualities that they don't have, and they're not going to act as if they don't have qualities, negative qualities that they do have. They won't conceal things, okay? He or she possesses the 10, so this is for a Vajra master, he or she possesses the set of 10 outer qualities and the set of 10 inner qualities of a Vajra master. So you can see it's not just, any Joe Blow and Susan Sweetheart who comes along and says, well, I'm a Vajra master. It's very hard to become one, yeah? This mentor must have received initiation into Vajrayana, kept the precepts and commitments purely, studied the practices well, completed the appropriate retreats and concluding ceremonies, and experienced some deep insight through this path. Okay? So it's not just anybody who practices Vajrayana and recites mantras. Okay. Finding a qualified tantric guru may take many years, but careful selection is worthwhile. Yeah. Because then you wind up with a reliable teacher, and then, what you learn is going to be accurate. You're going to receive accurate instructions, and guidance, and you're not going to have a problem. But if you have this mind of, oh, I want to collect lots of tantric initiations, they're all so far out, and you don't check anybody's qualities, that's kind of like, meetings, marrying somebody without even knowing them. Yeah. And it's actually more dangerous than marrying somebody you don't know, because who you take as your tantric master is going to influence many, many future lives. Whereas if you marry somebody, on a blind date, okay, it goes bad in this life, finished, but it's not going to take you down the wrong spiritual path for a long time. Okay, tantric texts instruct that initiations be given only to people who are properly prepared, those who have faith, the determination to be free of samsara, bodhicitta, correct understanding of emptiness, not to people who lack understanding of the fundamentals of Buddhism. In spite of this, some Tibetan lamas allow newcomers to attend initiations. Their thought is to plant good seeds in the person's mind stream. In general, this may be beneficial. However, detrimental results sometimes follow when initiations are given prematurely. Because afterwards, then the person says, what have I done? They hear that in the initiation that there was the taking of different precepts and commitments, and they're going, huh? I don't remember doing that. I don't want any precepts, And so they kind of freak out, because it really is like marrying somebody on a blind date. So, better to go slowly. Ethical conduct is crucial in Tantra. Tantric precepts are taken on the basis of the Bodhisattva precepts, which in turn are based on refuge in the three jewels, and preferably all 5 lay precepts. So in the order in which we take the precepts are first the pratimoksha precepts, which include the 5 lay precepts and the monastic precepts. Then, when you're trained in those, take the bodhisattva precepts. Then, when you're comfortable with those, then you can think about entering Vajrayana and taking those precepts and commitments. Those with tantric initiation must study the various precepts and commitments and practice them diligently. Similarly, they must receive teachings and study the steps of meditation on emptiness, the visualization of the deity, mantra recitation, and so forth in a tantric meditation, as well as practice these daily. So usually when you take an initiation, very often there's a daily commitment, either to do the whole sadhana. The sadhana means the practice manual, or sometimes it's just to recite a few mantra. Okay, you don't know, so you have to ask beforehand. Furthermore, Vajrayana practitioners must continue to strengthen their renunciation of samsara, bodhicitta, and wisdom realizing emptiness. Do purification practices to cleanse their mind stream of destructive karma and accumulate merit. Okay, so the purpose of taking the initiation is to have the ability to do the practice. If you don't want to do the practice, there's really not much reason to take the initiation. Vajrayana teachings and practices should remain private or secret, in that tantric practitioners should not boast about the initiations they have received or advertise to others that they do Vajrayana practice. They should keep their Vajrayana images private, taking them out only when they meditate. In this way, they avoid the danger of self-centeredness and arrogance, attitudes that hinder spiritual practice. Okay? So, my teacher, Geshe Ashitoptan, the one who was the very simple monk with, that I tell you about, so he meditated for many years in a hut above Tushita. It's kind of above and around the valley. And and there was one of his disciples, a monk at the dialectic school, who brought him groceries, food once a week. And this monk, I was friends with him, because Geshe-la was my teacher. And he told me never once when he went up there did he see Geshe-la's tantric implements, his deity pictures, anything. And he was a close disciple. Yeah. So Geshe-la just was completely discreet and nonchalant about all of this. Yeah. And I remember, just to show you why it's so important to be discreet, is one time when I was living in France at the monastery there, we had invited some Catholic sisters over. We were friends with a group of Catholic sisters. So one of the newer nuns who didn't know a lot, so she made her altar very nice, and she had a picture of Vajrayogini, one of the deities, on her altar. And she didn't know that, this is something that should, be handled discreetly. Anyway, these two Catholic nuns, she very proudly brought the two Catholic nuns into her room and showed them her altar, and they went, "What is this?" I mean, they were just like horrified. Yeah. So, so it just shows why it's just much more skillful, keep everything discreet. Yeah. And you see some people, it just, it's like, you can tell it's such an ego thing for them. Like, I've taken this initiation from so-and-so, and that initiation, and this, and that, and this, and that. And how many initiations have you taken? And it's this like, no, that's not it. Okay, so now a little bit about the excellent features of the highest Yoga Tantra. So why they say tantric practice is especially quick in bringing awakening if you have the proper foundation set. So what are the characteristics about Tantra that make it special in this way? Okay. So according to one system of classification, Buddhist Tantra can be divided into 4 classes: action, performance, yoga, and highest yoga. Highest Yoga Tantra reveals the ultimate meaning of Buddha nature by explaining the subtlest level of mind, the fundamental innate clear light mind. When this subtlest consciousness is transformed into the path, yoga, that means when it's used to realize emptiness, yogis are equipped with a very powerful instrument to quickly purify both the afflictive obscurations and the cognitive obscurations, and to complete all of Buddha's magnificent qualities. And that's because they're dealing with this completely subtlest, most refined level of mind. Yeah, so they don't have to deal with all the gross conceptions and all that kind of stuff that we have. Some of the factors that distinguish highest Yoga Tantra and make it profound are: 1 has a strong, urgent aspiration to become a Buddha to benefit sentient beings. And this brings forth special effort in our practice. So because of the strong bodhicitta motivation, you're really motivated in your practice. The object with which one cultivates serenity is very subtle, leading to deep concentration. So sometimes the object is oneself as having the body made of light of a Buddha, but also here I think it's referring to sometimes is the object of serenity is a very small, what they call a seed syllable, a little letter that's located in one or another parts of the body. And so by having something that's very small and located in the body, that object makes it easier to focus the mind and leads to deep concentration. Stabilizing meditation on subtle meditation objects and subtle levels of mind increases the clarity of the ascertainment of emptiness. So when you're developing serenity on these very subtle meditation objects, and you're activating subtler levels of mind, then again, because you're dealing with the subtle levels of mind that are free from the very rambunctious afflictions and gross conceptions and things like that, then the clarity of your meditation is greatly enhanced. And so if you use that mind to focus on emptiness, the clarity of the perception of emptiness really increases. Due to special meditative techniques, serenity and insight are attained simultaneously. So in the Sutrayana practice, usually first you train in both serenity and insight, but you attain serenity first and then apply it to insight. But in Tantra, there's special techniques so that you can cultivate and attain the two of them at the same time. Great bliss is generated to make manifest the subtlest clear-like mind, which is then used to realize emptiness directly and eliminate even the subtlest obscurations. Okay, so using the subtlest mind, you eliminate the subtlest obscurations. Method and wisdom are cultivated simultaneously in a single mental event. Okay, so method is bodhicitta. Here in Tantra, it's bliss, all the, practices, generosity and so forth, and then wisdom. So these, usually you have to cultivate the wisdom aspect in when, the yogis do it in their meditative equipoise, and then in the break time between sessions, then they're doing the practices of method, generosity, compassionate actions, and so forth. But here, in Vajrayana, there's the opportunity to cultivate method and wisdom simultaneously. And so that means that you can fulfill the collections of merit and the collections of wisdom simultaneously. Okay, one trains in perceiving the two truths simultaneously, preparing the way for Buddhahood, where conventional and ultimate truths are perceived at the same time. So, that's done in Vajrayana meditation by dissolving oneself into emptiness and then thinking that wisdom realizing emptiness manifests as the deity. Then the path of the union of bliss and emptiness that leads to an illusory body is a unique cause for attaining a Buddhist form body. Okay, so that just has to do with the stages of practice in Tantra, and the illusory body is one of those stages, and it, it's very similar to a form body of the Buddha, so it makes that whole transition much easier. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this because it requires initiation and it's beyond what you really need to know, and you're probably confused enough already. Because there's a lot of big words in here. Okay, the illusory body and actual clear light, actualized in Vajrayana, are substantial causes that are directly concordant with the resultant form and truth bodies. Okay, so two stages on the completion stage in highest Yoga Tantra. One is the actual clear light, and one is the illusory body. And so the illusory body is very similar to the Buddha's form bodies. The actual clear light is very similar to Buddha's truth body. So again, it's the causes are quite concordant with the results, and so easy to produce those results. The practice of transforming the bliss generated by desire into the path is governed by the tantric precepts that all practitioners of highest Yoga Tantra have taken. Transgression of these ethical restraints is extremely serious and leads to great non-virtuous karma and adverse consequences. Yogis who take desire into the path must have stable renunciation, bodhicitta, and wisdom. Only a few rare people have these prerequisites. Even if monastics are qualified, they do not engage in this practice since they are celibate. So the reason this is emphasized so much in this chapter is because this book is designed for people also from other Buddhist traditions, and this misunderstanding about what Vajrayana is very prominent among people who follow other Buddhist traditions, and so that's why it's emphasized so much here. Okay. Some people mistakenly believe, since everything is empty, there is no good or bad. When one realizes emptiness, one is beyond ethical precepts. And I've been places where you hear Westerners say this, it's like, oh, there's no good, there's no bad, everything's empty, so you're beyond ethical precepts, you just do what you want because your mind is so highly realized. Okay, well, maybe when you're a Buddha, that's the case, but besides that, this is, not suitable logic, because actually, this kind of subtle practice should make us more attentive to karma, more attentive to how dependent arising functions. Yeah, more careful with monitoring our mind and making sure we're creating virtue and abandoning non-virtue. Padmasambhava, he was a great Indian yogi who helped to bring Buddhism to Tibet. He said that the higher one's realizations of emptiness, the greater one's respect for karma and its effects, and thus the stronger one's commitment to ethical conduct. And he's the yogi to beat all yogis. So if he says this, you listen. Okay. Contrary to misconceptions, tantric yogis do not practice magic, and Tantra is not an excuse to behave in outlandish ways. The Buddha was always humble, and he is our guru. He worked very hard on the path, living simply and practicing diligently. We should follow the Buddha's example. Okay, so again, that's emphasized. I went one time, it was in Tennessee, I think, many years ago, and I was invited to speak in a college course, and one of the students in this college course, that they were studying Buddhism, I gave the talk, and he raised his hand, and he said, well, our textbook says that Tibetan Buddhists practice magic. Can you tell us something about this? A college textbook. I mean, that's how the extent of wrong information. Of all things, a college textbook should have correct information. It didn't. Yeah. And so I had to explain to him, no, this is not the case. One time when I was walking in a park in Singapore, somebody stopped me and said, can you give me my lucky number to win the lottery? I said, no, I don't do this. Well, I heard that Tibetan monastics have powers and you can see these things. Well, sorry, I don't. No, come on, give me the, my winning number. Yeah. So this is very much and also because there is a video, some group in Taiwan. I don't know if any of you have seen this video, but my friends in Malaysia wrote me about it because they saw this video made in Taiwan and they were very concerned, and some of them were doubting about it. It was initiating a lot of doubts about Tibetan Buddhism in their minds. So I went and looked at this video, and these people completely, they misunderstood what His Holiness taught, what Tantra was. They made all these accusations, And it was very disturbing because it was completely inaccurate. But they had set themselves up as the guardians of, it was a whole group, a guardian, set themselves up as guardians against Tibetan Buddhists who were coming to teach in Taiwan. Yeah, really bad news. So, so that's part of the reason for the emphasis in this chapter, to try and correct some of that stuff. Yeah.
If wrathful deities are wrathful towards our afflictions and not us per se, what are peaceful deities peaceful towards besides all sentient beings?
Well, they're manifesting that when you subdue the afflictions, then your mind is very peaceful. Yeah. And if you look, for example, with Chenrezig, his eyes, you can see in, our stained glass window, beautiful, serene eyes. You look at that and it makes you think, oh, I can become like that too. And then the whole figure is symbolic, 1,000 arms reaching out to benefit sentient beings, 1,000 arms like this with 1,000 eyes. Yeah, not like us, sitting like this, but totally open. So, these figures, the colors, the body language, everything is symbolic of a Buddha's qualities.
What throws me a little bit is that those symbols are for us personally to read into.
Yeah.
But the wrathful deities aren't for us to personally.
Oh, yes, it is. Okay. You read the symbols of the wrathful deities are also symbolic of many, many things. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. They have different implements, and the implements all represent different aspects of the path.
That clarifies it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, now the concluding chapter. So in the past, due to lack of knowledge, people had the impression that the Pali and Sanskrit traditions were completely different and separate. That is a mistake. The Pali tradition is the foundation of the Buddha Dharma, and the practice of Vinaya is essential for the existence of the Buddhist teachings. The Buddha himself shaved his head and became a monk, training in ethical conduct. He then did 6 years of meditation, training in concentration, followed by meditation under the Bodhi tree, training in wisdom. Through that, he attained full awakening. So the Buddha's life illustrates the 3 higher trainings. As his followers, we must follow his example and practice these. The Prajnaparamita Sutras, found in the Sanskrit tradition, elaborated on core Buddhist teachings practiced by all Buddhists. In these sutras, the Buddha extensively explained the possibility of completely eliminating ignorance from our mind, and gave a comprehensive explanation of true cessations and true paths. He also elaborated on the Bodhisattva path. Okay, so you can see, in the Mahayana sutras, they're built upon, the early sutras that the Buddha taught. In the past, there has been some distance between followers of the Pali and Sanskrit traditions. This benefits nobody. We must come together and exchange. For example, we can learn from each other's pratimoksha, that's the monastic precepts. We must have more regular meetings, not just ceremonial meetings, but serious ones with genuine exchange. Thoughtful discussion to learn about each other's tradition is essential. So I find that our monastic meetings that have been going on for 23 years now, I think. Ours was when we had it here, that was the 21st. So we just had the 23rd. Yeah. So I think that's a really wonderful step In the case of the Western monastics from different traditions, really meeting every year, getting to know each other, learn about each other's traditions, becoming friends and supporting each other. I think it's really quite wonderful. In Asia, I think, people are used to their own traditions more. There isn't as much conversation and meeting, but, there are many attempts to do that. And so slowly, people from different traditions are talking to each other. What's unfortunate in these meetings in Asia is that they are often politicized. And so if you invite monastics from mainland China, then they want to choose the Tibetans who come because they say Tibet is part of China. They don't want any of the Tibetans who are in exile in India to come because those are they're part of the Dalai Lama clique, which is seen as evil by the Chinese communists. So it's really unfortunate that all of that gets so politicized and impedes in Buddhists really coming together and getting to know each other. And also, in the West, I think it's facilitated because many people speak English, whereas in Asia, most Asian monastics don't speak another language. They speak their own language, and a few may speak English, or a few may speak, another Asian language, but mostly not. At least that's my experience. Okay, so that also inhibits some of the discussion. But I know the Central University of Tibetan Studies in Sarnath, they have conferences and things, and they bring people together, and, so it's very useful what they're doing. And His Holiness attends these kinds of meetings whenever he can, unless they tell him he's not welcome because he's a splitter of the motherland and blah, blah. Okay. Yeah, it's really unfortunate because there's many countries in Asia where he cannot travel because if he goes there, the Beijing government pressures the local government of that country. And since Beijing, China is so big and is a world power, then, it makes it very difficult for the smaller nations in Asia, even though those nations are Buddhist and the people in them want His Holiness to visit. Okay, so His Holiness continues, I am a Buddhist, but on a deeper level, I am a human being, one of the 7 billion on this planet. Human beings are social animals, so each individual's future depends on the rest of humanity. So, even for my own interest, I have to think seriously about all of humanity. Each one of us wants a happy life and does not want suffering, and each one has the right to attain that. There is no difference between people of different religious faiths or between religious and secular people in this regard. No matter our background, rich or poor, educated or uneducated, high social status or low, on this level we are all the same. Many of the problems humanity faces comes from emphasizing these superficial differences amongst us. And this is so true. We pick out differences that are based on just physical differences. Yeah, the color of skin, the age of the body. Yeah, what language somebody speaks. Yeah, what gender they are. And these are all very superficial differences, but we pick those out and then categorize people into groups and think we know everything about them when we know virtually nothing. So this is, one of the big things His Holiness is working on, is trying to get people to see that we are all the same on a deeper level of wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. And so it makes sense when there's suffering, it doesn't matter whose it is, to eliminate it. When there's happiness, it doesn't matter whose it is, to make it available. Yeah. The Buddha's teachings are now 2,600 years old and are still relevant to today's world. Even some top scientists are eager to learn the Buddha's methods to tackle destructive emotions. But while the Buddha's teachings are wonderful, there are signs that the quality of our lamas, tulkus are those who are recognized incarnations of a previous lama. So there are signs that the qualities of our lamas, tulkus, and teachers is degenerating. If spiritual teachers and leaders do not lead a disciplined life, how can they teach other people? In order to show others the right path, we must follow it ourselves. We Buddhists, no matter what tradition we practice or how many titles we have, must be genuine followers of the Buddha. Changing our dress is not sufficient. Even a puppet can wear monastic robes. Real change must occur in our own hearts and minds. To become a genuine Buddhist follower or a true Buddhist monastic, we must seriously practice self-discipline. So words, outward appearances are not sufficient. The Buddha taught us the path to nirvana, but whether we attain it is up to us. The Buddha cannot lead us to awakening by giving blessings. We are our own masters, and everything depends on our own actions. Whether an action is constructive or destructive depends on our motivation. By teaching us how to correct our motivation, the Buddha Dharma makes a significant contribution to inner peace. So the whole idea is it's not about looking good, it's about mental transformation. Because it is not too difficult to look good and to put on an act so that people think you're a genuine religious practitioner, or even to put on an act and pretend you have special powers. That's not too difficult, but to really have a compassionate, wise motivation is very difficult. But it's that is the determining factor of whether what we say or do creates virtue or non-virtue. Not what other people think. It's what's going on in our mind. So we're responsible for that. Yeah. And if we do it right, we make a significant contribution to inner peace, and peace in the world. And if we don't guard our mind and just act any old way, we contribute to the degeneration of the Buddha's teachings, which is a tremendous loss. All major religions have the potential to build inner peace, and through that, to create a better world. But one unique quality about Buddhism, Jainism, and part of the Samkhya tradition is the emphasis on individual responsibility. We believe in the law of causality. If we engage in ethical actions, happy results will come. If we act harmfully, unpleasant events will occur. Because the law of causality is a natural law, no one else can save us from experiencing the results of our harmful actions, not even the Buddha. So the Buddha can teach us the way to save ourselves, but the Buddha can't do the work for us. It's like we have the little thing. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So the Buddha is leading us to the teachings, but he can't make us practice. Religious people sometimes act hypocritically, praying for all sentient beings, but ignoring some beings' rights and exploiting others. Yeah, this was written before the big thing in Burma, in Myanmar, but that's exactly what's happening there. We may have religious images and books in our homes, but our actions are corrupt. No great spiritual teacher tells us, exploit others as much as you can, then I will bless you. If you accept a higher being such as a Buddha, Christ, Krishna, or Muhammad, you should be an honest and truthful person. In that way, you will gain more self-confidence, thinking, I have nothing to hide. I can say what I feel, and my actions are transparent. And that's true. That gives you a tremendous amount of freedom, when you're transparent and when we start to clean up our act, then we don't have fear of other people finding out things about us that we've wanted to keep secret. Yeah. And we can say what we think, and our words are not going to, be hostile or aggressive towards others. So it really gives you a lot of inner freedom. Yeah. And so we can see now with everything that's going on, with all these, the outing of all the people who are committing sexual assault. Yeah. That, those people have spent many years doing this and have spent a lot of time and effort to cover it up. Yeah. But eventually it's coming out, and now they're in deep trouble, even though they've been very successful in their different fields and may have a lot of money. They're having a lot of problems because of their previous behavior. And so then, of course, there's more attempt to cover it up, more attempt to blame the victim, and so on. Yeah. And then, then mentally, your mind's just so distraught and so overwhelmed with, I want to have a good reputation, but these people know all this dirt about me, because I did these things, but they're bad for bringing it out, even though I did do those things, So unwilling to be frank and to clean up their own ethical messes. And so that just brings a lot of suffering in the world. And you can see, because when people create non-virtue and then they lie about it, yeah, then other people don't trust them at all. If you create non-virtue and at least you're frank about it and you apologize and you make amends, okay, people can restore trust. But when you just keep one cover up after another one and blaming other people and all, then, how can other people trust you? How do you feel about yourself when you go to bed at night? Yeah, that's the question. Because at the end of the day, we all live with ourselves, and we all have to be honest. And so, if we make an effort to, we've all made mistakes. If we make an effort to purify our mistakes, then we can learn from things. We can go on. We can make amends. We can grow. Yeah. But if we're always in hypocritical and cover up my boo-boos, cover up my evil actions mode, then, there's no way we're going to grow at all. And so that's how samsara continues. Yeah, we just keep getting reborn again and again and again, and we keep harming other people again and again and again, and people don't trust us again and again, and we wonder why they don't again and again, but we never think to really change our ways, and subdue our mind. So that's the real thing. Okay. So His Holiness said, in that way you will gain more self-confidence, thinking, I have nothing to hide. I can say what I feel, and my actions are transparent. Others will trust you. So if you care about yourself, Honesty and truthfulness are important sources of inner strength and self-confidence. And it's really true. If you're honest and truthful, you have nothing to hide. So you can be confident in yourself. Even if you have fantastic qualities, you can be confident in what you do have. You're not having to use all your energy to cover up what you've done and pretend to be somebody you aren't. Some people speak very nicely and smile a lot, but their motivation is something different. How can others trust or respect them? We must be serious. As a Buddhist monk, I always observe my mind. When I wake up every morning, I remember the Buddha and recite some of his teachings. Then I set my motivation. As a student of the Buddha Dharma, today I will live with honesty, truthfulness, compassion, peacefulness, and nonviolence. Whenever I have time, I study, think about, and meditate on the sutras and commentaries. As a result of immersing my mind in these books, I have developed full conviction that the practice of the 3 higher trainings is indispensable. We Buddhists have a responsibility to serve humanity. The very motivation for Gautama Buddha's awakening was to benefit sentient beings. His entire life and doctrine were meant for the welfare of all sentient beings. However, sometimes it seems that we think, let the Buddha work hard, we'll have a luxurious life. How can we think that? If we are Buddhists, we must follow the Buddha's own example. He lived simply and was content with what he received. My sincere hope for our Buddhist brothers and sisters is that when we talk about the Buddha Dharma and say propagate Buddhist teachings, we ourselves first propagate the Dharma in our own hearts. That is essential. Human intelligence has advanced scientific knowledge and technology, bringing both benefit and increased power of destructions. Isn't that true? Yeah, we think, technology is so wonderful, it's going to make our lives so easy. And we've also developed bigger and better ways to kill more people quicker. Yeah, is that the meaning of our lives, to be able to do that? Creating a happier world ultimately depends on individuals' motivations. Individuals living together with other individuals form communities and nations, and leaders arise from these. When individuals create inner peace in their own hearts, communities and eventually the world will become peaceful. This is the only way. Yeah? So we can't legislate peace. We can't force peace. Yeah? It depends on individual transformation. And so we all have to do that work. We can't hire anybody else to do it for us. Yeah, we can hire people to wash our dishes, mow our lawns, but we can't hire people to do our practice. Yeah, because the transformation of our own minds we're the only ones who can do that. Okay. His Holiness speaks very directly, doesn't he? He doesn't mince words.
Just wanted to share that too. In German-speaking countries, we have a German Buddhist order that includes all traditions.
Mm-hmm.
They meet every year.
Yeah. Germany's quite good about that, with a German Buddhist order. I know Australia has that. I think Italy does. The U.S., there's some attempt at that, but I don't hear much about it.
I have a comment. I just want to say that the last paragraph emphasizes my entire motivation for being here, in that I I've heard such a theory before, and it resounds with me immensely that that peace at large starts with the self, and it's the individual's responsibility to see that it reaches up the chain. It's not trickle down economics of peace.
Yeah.
And it's my favorite paragraph in the whole book right there.
Yeah. Yeah. This is grassroots. And from grassroots, then things start to change. Yeah. And you can really see the effect that one individual can have on the entire world. Yeah. You see, on the negative side, Hitler, Stalin, Mao, one individual can create havoc in many people's lives, because they adversely influence other beings who join together with them. On the other hand, one individual, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, His Holiness, Bishop Tutu, an individual like that can inspire, again, huge numbers of people and create a totally different result. Yeah. So we may not be famous like them, but, we're the ones who influence our friends and family and colleagues. Yeah, so we have to start with the people around us, and if we can influence them in a good way, by virtue of our own practice first, then that's a really wonderful way to contribute to world peace. I mean, just to give you one example, okay? So I think you might be familiar with my book, Taming the Mind. Yeah. So I got a letter one time from a guy in prison. He was in Washington State, actually, and he was in prison because his wife had an affair with somebody else, and he was very angry about it, and she got a restraining order against him, and he violated the restraining order, and I forget what else he did. Anyway, he got arrested, and he got a prison sentence. And while he was in prison, he wrote in this letter to me, he said, my sole focus has been on planning how to retaliate against my wife and her boyfriend, because they completely ruined my life and they hurt so much. And he said, I've spent years thinking of how I'm going to kill them when I get out. And then he wrote that he started going to the Buddhist group. I don't know why, but and there was the book Taming the Mind in their Buddhist library and in their prison, and he read the book, and he wrote and he said, "Thank you for helping me not to become a murderer." So it was just like, yeah, okay, if there's one being that we can influence in a good way, then that's a big step, because you can imagine if he had killed his wife and her boyfriend, and they had kids, he and his wife had kids, then how it affects the kids, then how those kids' lives are going to affect other people, and so on and so forth. You really see the ripple effect.
I have heard on this path that there's no competition, that if we sincerely aspire in a positive way, going upward, within other, Dharma friends or in Sanghas, that there's no competition to become awakened. And to me, this is very interesting.
There's no competition.
There's no competition.
Yeah.
As we aspire, and it's for me, it's very interesting because that is certainly the way we live on this planet. We're rooted in competition and scarcity. So I just found that interesting that, you know, it's our obscurations that if we act through those, that actually is the problem. And somehow life is organized in an intelligent manner that the path and liberation is open to everyone if we aspire. And we can actually benefit each other, which is interesting.
Right.
I just wanted to know what you think about that.
Yeah. So very much, instead of competing with each other, let's benefit each other. Yeah. And the whole idea of competition in our society, and you're right in this way, this is what we're brought up with, isn't it? To beat the other guy, to be better than the other person, to have more money than them, to be more famous, to be a better athlete or honest or artist or musician or whatever your thing is, to be better than somebody else. And then we base our feeling of self-worth on that competition. And it's such a dead end because you're better than one person, but somebody else is better than you. And once you're the best, then you have tremendous anxiety because how are you going to hold on to that? It's impossible. You know, like these athletes and especially like the boxers, you know, like you're the world champion. Well, how long are you going to be world champion? How long are you, you won an Olympic gold. How many times can you do that? Your body is going to wear out and it's impossible to continue that. Yeah. I talked to one friend and she was telling me that she'd gone back to school and she was the head of her class. And she said, instead of it feeling good, it brought so much anxiety because how was she going to continue to keep being the best person in her class? You can't. There's always somebody that's going to come and be better. So this whole thing of competition, it just breeds anxiety and fear and worry and very bad feelings amongst people. You hear, my brother told me, he went to one school and that before exams, some people checked the books out of the library that people needed to study for the exams so that nobody else could use those books to study and would get poorer grades. I mean, that's horrible. That's horrible. You're nodding your head. You heard of that?
Directly by, it was common in the medical department, that's what I understand.
Yeah.
When I heard from pre-med students, they would rip out chapters of the books that, so you go to the library and the whole chunk is gone.
Yeah. So, I mean, this kind of attitude that everybody else is a rival and somebody else that you have to step on and prove yourself better than. There's no inner peace within the individual, and their relationships with other people are equally, distorted and corrupted. Yeah. You can see this very clearly with some of the people in our government. I won't mention who, but this is how they live their life, in competition. And the more people I can put down, the better I think I'm going to feel about myself. But, when you're alone with yourself, does putting down other people really make you feel good about yourself? It doesn't work. It's not a good strategy for happiness.
Sort of what Paul talked about competition, he talked about categories, and one of the things I enjoy teaching is just the danger of categories, because the moment you put a category, there's an us and a them. And it certainly ties with the competition because you're constantly competing for any resource, political, economic power. Those are just really two dangerous ideas that when you put them together, you sort of see it play out in our society a lot.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. The idea that if somebody else has it, I don't. And that's bad.
earlier you were talking about how one individual can make a big difference, whether it's negative or positive. And I hope this won't embarrass you, but I want to appreciate so much you having the original idea to approach His Holiness with, the wish to bring out a long-rim text, an extensive long-rim text or a series of books to benefit Westerners. And that's really the birthplace of this book, and the fact that you've been able to fulfill one of His greatest wishes, which is to promote interfaith dialogue or inter-Buddhist dialogue even. I just really appreciate that we've had this opportunity to go through the book. So thank you.
Thank you. Shall we dedicate? Maybe we should read a few lines at the beginning. Yeah, for auspiciousness. Okay. Not all people think alike. They have different needs, interests, and dispositions in almost every area of life, including religion. As a skillful teacher, the Buddha gave various teachings to correspond to the variety of sentient beings. We're going to look at the development of the two major Buddhist traditions containing these teachings, the Pali and Sanskrit traditions. But first, we begin with the life story of Shakyamuni Buddha. So let's especially dedicate so that the Buddha's teachings can be preserved in our world in a pure fashion and spread to everywhere, and that people can really benefit from these teachings, creating inner peace in their minds and peace amongst each other. And that all of our teachers, especially His Holiness the Dalai Lama, have long and healthy lives.